What is up, everybody? Welcome to Blu Node Lounge. This is your host, Blue Toshi, where we talk about all things Bitcoin culture, eternal, art, coders, traders, degens, you name it. We have them on the show, and we have candid conversations about this space that we love. And today is no exception. So, kingpunkape, welcome to the show. So excited to have you here. I've been a fan for a while with your Royals and DMT collection. You've got a new collection coming out called ABBF, Atomic Bitcoin Butt Flowers. We're going to talk about that DMT and actually get people who haven't turned the leaf on that to understand it. But welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you, Blue. Great to be here. It's 3 a.m. I'm well caffeinated and talking about my favorite thing, crypto art.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know, I followed you and I've read some of your posts for a while. I was a big fan of Royals, but I didn't know when I see King, you know, I'm like, is that, I assumed it was a dude, and obviously you've got a
Yes.
female voice, so I'm doxing your femininity, but I think it's super cool. There's we could argue way too many dudes in the space, right? And not enough women, not enough female energy, and not enough on that side of the coin. So it's cool to hear your voice and to see one of the early DMT OGs and one of the early ETH OGs for art and Bitcoin ordinals is a woman, which is great.
Yeah, thanks. I think I saw someone tweet the other day and I thought, wow, there's such a truth to this. They're like, we're not in a bull market until we see more women here. And it's true. Like if you were around in the early days, there was a lot of female participation, and that I do think it speaks to us reaching beyond the kind of core audience that we have right now. So I think that is a bullish signal and I'd love to see it.
Do you think we actually have reached upon the core or the beyond the core audience? I feel like we're so, you know, Bitcoin's obviously going up and, you know,
Yeah.
things are getting repriced, but you know, it's to me, we're still kind of in an ordinals lull, but I think this is one of the most fun times because everyone gets to let their guard down and just hang out with each other, get to know each other, and get to look at good builders, good artists, and find out what they're working on.
Yeah, I don't look, there's always going to be cycles. And in my mind, I just think long term. I don't think there's any case for in the future that what we're doing here is ignored or doesn't come back and people don't look at it as a cultural artifact. So we have to kind of bring that perspective to us being here. And we look at a lot of the early crypto artists, before NFTs became a thing. There was a core audience doing the sort of things that we're all doing now before that went mainstream. So yeah, I definitely think, it will happen. And it might happen sooner than we think.
Yeah, I think so too. It's funny. You can never predict it. I guess with some influencers, they can certainly try and tip the scales and make it seems like everybody's in. But whenever you think something is totally down and out, you're like, oh, ordinals are dead. Like it was a good trend and nothing happened. And I'm not saying yours truly thinks this,
Yeah.
but when people just finally just give up and they go touch grass, like then stuff pops, you know. I do feel like in these last couple of years, like since basically NFT summer, DeFi summer, everyone always tries to label summer as this big thing that's happening. And I don't know about you, but like I got kids, like I like going outside, I like swimming, I like playing golf. Like for me, summer is a time to take a break, because if you're doing 24/7 365 on that timeline, you can burn out so fast. Like you've got to have balance. So when you come back, for me in the fall and the winter, when it's cold up here in the Chicagoland area, that, you know, everything has its cycle. So for me, let's call it ordinals fall or ordinals winter, which is when people re-engage anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, all of those kind of taglines and stuff are just they're part of the culture. Like that kind of that sort of propensity to bullshit and believe our own nonsense is also part of what has become embedded in the culture. And I think as a whole, most people have a kind of good nuanced balance about that. You get it. So yeah, I mean, I always have a good laugh when those things come along and they're just part of it. And I think to survive in this space, you've got to embrace the nonsense as much as you do the good stuff. Like we can't filter out all these things. It's just part of the space we're in. So I just go with the flow on those things. I don't try and fight them anymore.
When you say embrace them and go with the flow, you just don't like if someone's rage baiting or like a total
Yeah.
grifter and is just pumping or whatever, you're saying you just choose to ignore the stuff
Yes.
you don't give a crap about and
Yeah.
they could do whatever they want because you're not going to waste your energy on that. You're going to spend your energy on your art, your positivity, obviously, and what you've got going on in your life.
Yeah, I think so. I look at, there are always some exceptions. I hate to see as soon as we've got a new narrative, there's an obvious kind of if you've been here long enough, a obvious bunch of group of people who jump on that bandwagon very quickly
Right.
and are kind of organized in a way so that they can do that. And you notice the same people doing that sort of stuff over and over again. And, it's never nice to see people
Yeah.
and you care for kind of fall for those things over and over again. But at the same time, in my community, I've got a lot of people who love degenning. And personally, I'm not someone who's looking for a new narrative and buying into it and stuff, but they love it and they get joy from it. And, they don't care if they lose money on it. So, that's also part of what makes the space so interesting. A lot of people are here for different reasons. A lot of people get joy out of different things, and all of that is valid.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a great melting pot, right? It's a melting pot of artists like you, coders, degens, just thinkers, tinkerers. Like it's an exciting time. And, in normie land and just in regular people who aren't, they can't even comprehend this. Like it's funny,
Yeah.
like for Bitcoin, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, if people asked, I would slowly onboard them with stuff. But now it's just like you've gone down so many rabbit holes. You're almost like my net now is like, look, dollar cost average in, like, and just start learning about it. Like buy a little Bitcoin and just start learning about it. And that's it. Keep it simple.
Yeah, I agree. And look, Bitcoin is, I think even in the last year has reached this tipping point in most traditional kind of finance thinking where people at least know what it is. They understand it's not going away and they're not dismissing it in the same way that
Right.
they have in the past. So I do think, everyone starts to get pings like, oh, what about Bitcoin? I get people ask me like, should I buy Bitcoin? And I don't give personal advice, but I say to people, look, every opportunity I have to buy it, I am. But I can't make the recommendation you do. But I think I wasn't and I didn't stack Bitcoin early. I knew a couple of people buying Bitcoin back in the day, and I, stopped them a couple of times and was like, "Oh, you got to show me how to do this." And I never got around to it. And like everyone's got a story like that, and we kick
Everybody's
ourselves.
got that story. Yeah.
But
100%.
I kind of feel like we're in a moment like that now. I think there's going to be enough growth in Bitcoin that those of us who are here and can feel it, feel the excitement around it, will be rewarded. And I think that applies to ordinals as much as it does to Bitcoin. I really believe that. I'm not here investing my time and effort because think it's a fad and I want to make sure I make my mark on it. I
Right.
genuinely believe there is something here that is going to have everlasting cultural value, including the humble PFP, which, a lot of artists like to mock as not art and stuff. If we think of the profile picture, it really came into its own through NFTs and ordinals, and is this very specific art form true to this culture we've created here. And I think that's something that's going to hold value over time.
Yeah, that's a really good point because you're right, especially those who do art or collect art. There is this kind of like, oh, PFPs, like pshaw, can't be bothered. But then again, like look at the Ethereum, chain, and look at
Yeah.
CryptoPunks. Like I would argue, obviously Ethereum was first to not only art but on-chain art, and I collected a lot of stuff. I used to have a CryptoPunk, but I think they play a very important role because there's so many. There's 10,000 punks, so call it 4 or 5,000 holders or whatever. Like they are kind of the keepers of the art and on-chain flame, and those CryptoPunks themselves obviously have a huge value. But you're right, it's so easy to kind of shirk off or just be like, yeah, whatever. It's not true art. But the PFP itself is so important because now that we're experimenting with more security and kind of creating this anonymous personality as an extension of ourselves, or maybe a facet of our personality and not showing our faces, there's something very fun and valuable to that our group of Bitcoiners and ordinals and Ethereum and all that stuff that we've gotten to experience that most of the rest of the world who's even on social media really hasn't yet.
Yeah, and look, the thing about CryptoPunks, you, and because I've studied them so closely, and I really believe there are good PFP collections out there that have been so the traits have been so carefully curated, and so much thought has gone into how it looks
Right.
as a collection. Like when you look across it as a collection, CryptoPunks there is so much beauty in the way that collection was put together that hasn't even, dawned on a lot of people. It is an exceptional collection. And I rarely used it as a guide for the Royals, which was my DMT collection,
Right.
insofar as looking how you took something so simple and you managed to manipulate it through the tiniest of a pixel, and you created a whole new identity for someone. So taking those really simple things and creating something incredibly complex out of it, is something that I think is artistically undervalued by a lot of people, including many artists.
Oh, 100% agree. It's really reductionism as opposed to like, you're so used to like art, it's got to be the most bold and, but when you're on chain, files have to be smaller. There's a lot of trade-offs. And I love that Bitcoin and Ethereum on chain specifically have this limited canvas from which you have to work. So you have to make trade-offs. And to me, that's so important to the overall kind of ethos of the space, but also the constraints of art is what makes it beautiful,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as a creator, you're forced to think creatively to do the things you want to do. And I think Bitcoin and ordinals in particular, because we never had smart contracts, a lot of people just never bothered to look at it. But actually, I'd argue there's not much you can't do on Bitcoin that you can do on Ethereum. And those limitations really kind of force you to rethink art and become part of the art process you go through. I love to talk about as Bitcoin as a canvas. And we often get taglines and we don't stop to kind of
Right.
understand what it means. But Bitcoin is a canvas. It really is. It's there for us to create a new form of art on. And these days I really talk about Bitcoin art, and it's that subsector of a subsector that I really like to focus on, because I do think there's a lot we can do in Bitcoin that we can't do elsewhere.
Yeah, no, Bitcoin as a canvas is such a strong metaphor. And, it's the first time, art aside, that we can put information on a chain eternally, right? Or as long as the humanity exists and someone's running a full node and blocks are being mined, while they're still being mined. Like it's such a beautiful concept. And I was funny. I played golf yesterday. I was with my buddies afterwards at the bar, and I'm trying to explain to them like, oh, I'm interviewing some tomorrow, and we're going to talk about like art on Bitcoin. And I could just tell. I'm like, don't even. They had that puzzled look in their face. I'm like, don't worry, like don't even bother now. So like, I get art when you're physically touching it, but I don't get it. Like why would I buy something that's a bunch of ones and zeros? I said, well, every website you look at is ones and zeros. Every picture you take is ones and zeros. How is this any different? He goes, well, how do people view it? I said, there are interfaces that can read these ones and zeros and turn them into JPEGs and SVGs into little movie files. And that's what makes it so cool. And that code sits there forever. And he stayed puzzled. But again, it's because you have to walk people through. There's like if you want to get them into ordinals, there's like a 10-step process. So at
Oh
first,
yeah, totally.
yeah, at first, like you said, and I'm with you. Like, I think we're saying the same thing as far as like onboarding people. When I say DCA, I'm like, just nibble, just at some point get a little, because I had a client once who's like, hey, I know you did that Bitcoin and crypto thing. Like, let me give you a bunch of money and you invest for me. And then you like take 20% of the profits. And at first, like I went home all excited, and I woke up the next morning. I'm like, and I called him, I'm like, you know what, dude, like, that's just not me. Like I never want to be responsible, even though you're a wealthy person. I never want to be responsible I'd certainly love to be responsible for your winnings, but I don't think I ever would want to go in that business, because I don't be responsible for your losings, and my timing, I can't predict the complexities of the whole global markets and news and everything, because Bitcoin is the only thing that can absorb news and financial and regular info 24/7, 365. The stock market's closed more than it's open.
Oh yeah, totally. There's so many fascinating things about it as a phenomenon when you kind of
Yeah.
zoom out and look at it. And part of Atomic Bitcoin Butt Flowers is trying to capture that and capture it through data and represent it back to us as emotion or expression. But that Bitcoin zeitgeist that we all kind of feel and
Yeah.
sense, when that euphoria when price goes up. But price is what we're all looking at, but there's so much more going on in the background that kind of can measure that sort of enthusiasm. But just going back, and I think before we move on and talk about other things, just want to pick up on a point you
Uh-huh.
made, which is around trying to explain to people what the significance of even NFTs was.
Right.
And for me, what NFTs was something very simple when it comes to digital art is there was no way really prior to digital art, prior to them, that you could own digital art. It was something that existed on a computer or as a file or something else. And NFTs and ordinals have given us the access to own those files. And it's such a simple thing, but it really has changed the way digital art is traded, and it's given it value in a way that I think is often kind of overlooked. So as soon as someone kind of dismisses NFTs and I talk to them about that, the penny often drops for people. And so I think that's something very simple that kind of has got lost in all the possibilities, but I think it's very important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Before we get into DMT and stuff like that, I'm curious, what are some of your favorite, most inspired PFP collections? And it doesn't matter what chain.
PFP. Okay, out there, ones I've loved over the time. I own Riot Girls, which was
Oh,
Gremplin did the art for that. A massive Gremplin fan. It's not on chain. Cyber Brokers, I think, is on ETH, is one of the most beautiful PFP collections I've ever seen. Big fan of On-Chain Monkey. I think for a long time I stared at them and was like, I just don't get it until the sort of penny dropped on that. And I think that's an experience a lot of people have with On-Chain Monkey. Um, Obviously CryptoPunks. they are CryptoPunks, but I do really love them as a collection. I think they're beautifully executed. Um, I also love the puppets. Massive fan of the puppets. I saw the puppets being inscribed really early on as opium.
Yep.
And I saw them and just something immediately appealing to them. And actually a lot of Bitcoin babbies, which is my first collection.
Okay.
I said to her and I was like, go mint these things. Don't ask me why. And we did. I think they are have kind of captured something that I think would be very hard for people to replicate. Um, Gosh, I've never been asked that question. And so many I do sort
No,
of look
that
at.
this is great. Yeah, I didn't
But
mean to put you on the
yeah,
spot, but
but
it's just fun to hear. I would say one of mine. It's
yeah.
off chain, but one of the most beautiful ones, especially the spirit trait, is Azuki. I think
Oh yes, yeah,
Azuki did a really good job. I got a couple on the launch day, and those ones always captured my imagination. But I feel like spirits to me, it was because obviously so many PFP collections eventually pay homage to CryptoPunks, right, with hoodies and stuff like that.
yeah,
And obviously even Azuki, there's homages in there, but the spirit was the first one. I was like, oh, this is a cool use of nothing says Grail like more than that. So I
yes,
just thought that was a
yeah.
cool one. So how did you? I mean, you've been an artist for a while. Have you been like a coder artist pre blockchain days? Like how did you get into this space?
Yeah, so my background is actually as a writer, and that's always been my kind of creative outlet. I've worked in tech for a long time, and I've always felt like that creative weirdo in a tech scene.
Right.
When I discovered, NFTs and all the excitement around that, I was like, wow, this is like bringing my two worlds together. At the same time, I'd started painting, like just came out of nowhere. I woke up one day and was like, I need to paint. And I'd wake up at like 5 a.m. and sort of paint. And obviously during COVID, I couldn't go into my art studio. I was in Melbourne. We effectively couldn't leave our house for close to 2 years. That is not an exaggeration. It
Oh
sort of had one
wow.
of the longest lockdowns. Um, and so that's when I really started, turning to digital art. And very quickly it became clear to me that on-chain was the absolute way that I felt was the thing to do with art. And without that, I was like, oh, is it really on-chain? Can we say it's really there forever? So on-chain very quickly became important to me. And with that, pixel art became my sort of practice. But with every collection I've done, and my first collection on ETH was Punk Ape Yacht Club, and it was meant to be a kind of bit of a taking some shots at punks and and BAYC at the same time, but it was pixels. But then very
Wait, hold on.
quickly,
Can I just interrupt you? I think I
yes.
actually bought one of those and I
Oh, did
loved
you?
it. It wasn't one of my it was like the second PFP. I think I only sported it for a little while, or maybe I never put it on my timeline, but
Blue, I reckon you did because when I was like, oh, you know what? I think Blue Toshi was in Punk Apes at some stage. I think that's right.
Yeah, I don't do Discord a lot, but my
Yes.
name used to be on the ETH side, even in the early Bitcoin days, like in those first couple months, I was Chicago X. Um,
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah.
but I'm 99% sure. I'd have to dig it up. Like I'd start showing my computer screen, but I'm pretty sure I had one. I had this white because I just loved it. Like it was irreverent to me, but it was also like the art was good. Like I had this like albino, this white ape. I think it was a really clean one too, but I really liked it. But I'm pretty sure because I know there was a million derivatives, but
Yes, there was.
I'm pretty sure that's the one I had. And normally, like obviously we all FOMO'd into so much stuff in those early days, but I think I even found it after like the hype, not that you were a big hyper, but it was after the initial launch. And I was like, you know what? I want this because I think it's cool and it looks cool. And so I just bought one, which is kind of neat, but I'm 99% sure that is the exact one that I got. That's cool.
Yeah, and so from there, I really gathered around me this group of really strong collectors, many who have followed me through everything. And I think, one lesson for me as an artist in this space that I think a lot of people have had a different experience
Oh,
around by not creating a PFP is building that community has been so fundamental to my art practice. For
cool.
me personally, and having those people around me, they've been a soundboard, for so many things. And then Bitcoin Babbies was also pixel art. I was like, okay, guys, we are heading to ordinals. This looks like the place we're all going to have fun in. It's on chain. I created Bitcoin Babbies, and then very quickly after Bitcoin Babbies, I really doubled down on my coding practice and P5JS. And I noticed this kind of gap that existed between a lot of people who were either very clearly artistic and people who are either very clearly technologists. And bringing those two together is often hard to do. People either create a collection looking at the back end and the technology behind it,
Right.
but bringing kind of artistic lens to something became more and more important to me. And the Royals, which is a DMT collection, for me was about doing that, was really about trying to bring an artist's vision to something very technical.
Right.
So yeah, and from there it's just been like, okay, what else can we do? What can we do next? And I also did a collection called Art for the People in between those, which was a recursive collection. So, my philosophy has just become like, well, what more can we do? Where can we push this forward? What else is possible here? And how do I execute that in a way that's true to my art practice?
Right. What attracted you to DMT specifically?
Yeah, sure. Oh, look. Um, so what Evie did with Nat Cats was pure genius. You basically DMT, and you said, "Oh, help me understand DMT when you leave here." So DMT, in its simplest form, is a way for us to access another layer of data on chain. So what many people might not realize is if you create on the ordinals protocol, you cannot link to any data off chain. And that is actually incredibly limiting, say on ETH, where you might point to an off-chain API, or you can
Right.
pull in different things and create creative work. You can't do that on ordinals. But what DMT does is it allows you to use the tap protocol, which allows you to tap a deeper layer of data. So you can use that in other ways to kind of create art. So what DMT essentially is using blockchain data to find patterns and then to reinterpret that as art. So Royals tap into something called a CC bits field, which you do not understand you don't need to understand other than to know that when that occurs, it occurs on 2016 blocks at a time. And so what DMT is it goes through, identifies those 2016 blocks, says, okay, those are where royals exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take those block numbers and you use those to create art based on number patterns. So it's a very different way to creating a collection you would normally do, where you just go like, okay, this is a goatee, and goatees appear on 20% of the art, and you put it into a machine, it goes through and it randomly creates those kind of traits and assigns them to things. DMT assigns everything based on a number. So everything you see on the royals is on that royal because its block number is every trait is created by a pattern in the block number. So it's a really interesting way of creating a PFP. And if you look at the whole collection, as it's minted out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., you'll notice those patterns kind of emerging more than you do when you look at the collection like this. But
Right.
it's a real challenge to kind of build out variety and depth to a collection. And I really wanted to do that on DMT, and use a really kind of simple sort of format. But if you look through, there's a lot of variety there. There's alien zombies, there's golden peppies, there's all these sorts of very rare traits that can occur together and then create kind of really interesting combinations. Um, but I also, I think a few people are like, I don't get it. And I'm like, you don't have to. You can just look at the art and like it too.
Yeah, no, it's super cool, and there's so many, like you said, there's so many different patterns. What is the? I mean, a 10.1 thousand collection, like that's big. Obviously, Bitcoin could sustain
Yeah.
that earlier, but and I know like with Nat Cats and Royals that people like because DMT and tap, you're already tapping into what's in the blockchain. It's kind of a first come, first serve where people generally like the people that made a fortune in Nat Cats, like they were minting a ton of these, right? And then people
Yes.
had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these things. They're selling them over time, making a nice profit. Was Royals the same type of mint structure?
No. So in fact, what Royals did, and one of the things I developed with mScribe, so 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 Natcats were minted a little bit like you would a token. Like it was a free for all. Anyone could go in there, mint as many as they wanted. And you kind of landed up with this very unequal distribution. Some people owned 2,000 Nat Cats, like crazy numbers, then sold them at a fortune. We had something called Priv Authority on it, which meant that you were whitelisted. And effectively, the whole collection, over 10,000 of them, were sold just through whitelist. So you had to have access to the mint to mint one. And so it means we had this very wide distribution. Some people have argued, well, because we never had whales, that's taken a while for people to accumulate, to kind of build up the floor price, et cetera, et cetera. Who knows? But yeah, we're a little bit different to Natcats in that we have priv authority. It also means that if that pattern was to occur again, Royals wouldn't automatically mint. So there's always this risk with Nat Cats. If the pattern occurs again, there's just that free for all and everyone can go in and mint them again. So this is a little bit different. It's something that we
Hmm.
created, and DMT creators can opt to use that or not.
Can people predict when that happens again with Nat Cats in the future? Because it's I like what you did. You're like, no, I want to have a limited supply. There is something kind of cool though that like in 2036 this pattern comes up again, and
Yes,
those who are aware of the Nat Cat lore are like, oh, I'm max minting here. Like there's
yes.
something cool about that. Can we predict that in the future, or no, it doesn't reveal itself till it reveals itself?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no way we could predict it. Maybe quantum computing will help us predict it. Who knows? No, it's part of the cryptographic security. It's completely unpredictable. We could take a guess of when things might exist in the future, but that's also the beauty of working with patent data on the blockchain. And I've always had this kind of fascination with the fact that if you take a whole bunch of random numbers and you pump them out for infinity, eventually you'll start finding patterns in that.
Right.
Like you work backwards from that. And that's really what DMT does. It's like finding patterns or understanding amongst the chaos of randomly generated numbers. So yes, and it could be the case that the community decides that they want to mint the royals. That is something I've left completely open. And who knows, it might not happen in my
Right.
lifetime, but that is an option there as well.
Do you think, and one last kind of DMT deep dive question, like I know there's a strong following for it, and like I said, I got in that. It's
Yes.
like I definitely understand the basics, and I do think it's cool where it's almost like you're turning the shirt inside out. You're basically saying like the blockchain is the all knowing and all immutable source. We are tapping into its infinite and immutable information to then create and extrapolate or map traits over these certain block characteristics. Is that a fair
I
metaphor?
love I love that description. You're turning the shirt inside out.
Why?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, sorry, what was the question?
No, why do you think so many people have like there's definitely a loyal following, but
Yes.
it hasn't caught on as much as I ever thought it
Yeah.
would when I did my first deep dive. I'm like, this is cool. I like the concept. I got a Nat Cat. I was gonna get Royals. Wasn't there like a little snag or like delay? I think I went on vacation. I was
Oh
get
my gosh, it was like it was a minting for the ages. Like
Okay, that's
we
what I
ran into
thought. Okay.
so many tech, we ran into so many tech issues, but it kind of became the law of the
Right.
royals. And I can't tell you how many people say to me, I mean, look, almost every week, like that was the most fun they ever had in inscribing something because everything went wrong. There was a storm through Phoenix and Mscribe couldn't get fixed like everything that you could think could go
Right.
wrong went wrong.
This is ahead
Um
of its time. It is not ready, deemed God, you know.
yes, it was just like, I remember getting on the phone to Iman and Will, who run Mscribe, and we were just like at the end of it, we just had a laugh and be like, we have to just keep writing this through. But it just like everything that went wrong did. But then we really turned it around because it's what I started doing was dropping clues about where special traits could be,
uh
and not in a way that people could figure it out immediately. And people created these massive speculative sheets, thinking,
I
"Oh
remember
well,
going
I
through
think
some of those. Yeah.
yeah," and people kind of loved it. So it sort of kind of turned it around and became its thing. And if anything, I kind of learned in that moment just to we try so hard to present things as like amazing and all these things that they could be, but ultimately, if you're just very honest and human, we are all working on the edge of very new tech. Um, just embrace some of the clunkiness of that. That was definitely a message with the Royals and kind of really brought that home to me.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. And I love that you embrace the chaos and stuff not working. Um
Oh yeah, it totally was great fun.
yeah, so let's transition now to ABBF. I love the acronym. But it's the atomic. Oh wait, I want to go back to that. How do I get to the original?
Oh, just hit refresh. It'll do it.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
this. Yeah, so atomic Bitcoin butt flowers. Um, Great name. I'm such an idiot. I love websites that just have this little like I love this little drawing pattern. I could literally just sit here. It's like
I know it is. It's kind of like a stress ball.
yeah, it is. It's just like I get to see the flowers and I get to make my own little infinite patterns here. But so when I click in, we go in. So tell us about this evolution. So now this is obviously still on Bitcoin. Are we still within this tap protocol?
So no, no. So I think one of the you asked like why didn't DMT take on? And I think one of the reasons is when it comes to the art is always tied to JSON data.
Okay.
So what that means is you can't render the art. The art won't automatically render on something like Magic Eden, not because it's not on chain, because Magic Eden hasn't built the support to be able to do that.
Right.
I think many people in the DMT community just assumed that would come, and it never has. And so if you create a project that you want to be exist anywhere, or someone to kind of open and have it like atomic Bitcoin butt flowers evolves and changes, it's not really a suitable way for you to do that. So that's kind of how it, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But what DMT really helped me build into my practice is this importance of data and playing with data and bringing the stories of data into art. And I started thinking about this actually before the Royals were created. I had some iterations of what were the atomic Bitcoin butt flowers, but I had no idea how I was going to pull it off.
Right.
So that really kind of built my skill set in that
Right.
to be able to then create atomic Bitcoin butt flowers. There's not that many artists playing with what are called Bitcoin endpoints to pull in data into their art. There's a few, like CyberC, 3Z is one, and Otto has done it. I hate listing of people because you always miss someone really important, but there are a number of artists playing in this.
There's
but
so
no one's
many.
really...
There's Phenomena is really good too. I don't know if you've heard of them, but I've got a piece
Yeah.
from them called Eternal Tides. It's so awesome. The color palette changes daily, but it changes based on the waves change based on like different block activity signals. Like I personally am, when Brett introduced us, like I'm a huge fan of art that is directly tied into endpoints on the blockchain. Just to me, like you said, this is your canvas. I don't know if Ethereum has any sort of equivalent. I don't think Ethereum really has the endpoints that Bitcoin does. It certainly doesn't have
No, it doesn't.
Right. It doesn't have the varied endpoints. You can certainly do everything on chain, and that's a tricky canvas of itself. But with Bitcoin, with endpoints, with recursion, with, there's so many, with rare sats, there's so many things to play with. But tying into those endpoints directly into Bitcoin is probably my favorite. So tell us, and I know Casey just added a couple more, earlier this year. Tell me what endpoints you're kind of tapping into here.
Yeah, so basically the original idea was like, how can we have something react to Bitcoin price? And obviously very quickly I realized, I think at that point, ordinals weren't always sandboxed, so you could actually refer outside. That was a change that came into ordinals. So it was like, could I build a proxy algorithm that could take this on-chain endpoints and kind of tap into the enthusiasm. I call it the enthusiasm of Bitcoin. But it does often, you'll notice over time as people kind of pay more attention to them, there is some correlation to price. It's not direct. It's not meant to be direct, but it does kind of follow these sorts of patterns. So it takes all these different endpoints and it creates an algorithm. I know you're asking me like, what's in the algorithm? And when you spend so long on something and then stop thinking about it, it's really hard to go back and look at it. But I'll look it up in a minute. But it's measuring things like it's taking into, mining difficulty. It's taking into, oh God, let me have a look. A whole lot of things. It's actually on the website there.
Okay. Yeah, let's just scroll to it. So right now I'm going with this example. I love that you have the enthusiasm meter. And is everybody, do all have the same enthusiasm, or no? A lot of it's based on your own wallet use and activity with this. So to get up from blue lasers to the holy grail of max enthusiasm, where you're puking and everything's going on at once with lasers, puking, pulsing, everything, flying Bitcoin, you name it. Is that controllable by each person and their enthusiasm, or no, it's the blockchain enthusiasm?
No, it's the blockchain.
Okay,
So
got it. Got
what,
it.
yeah, so what I've done is I've created this formula and I was like, okay, and I've actually put that formula on chain as an on-chain API.
Okay.
Just got to write the instructions how everyone can use it. So I've taken this data, on-chain data, I've made a new algorithm, and then I've stuck it back on chain. I really love that. So other people will be able to access the Bitcoin enthusiasm score. So what happens is every butt flyer goes at a very specific time every 30 seconds and checks the Bitcoin enthusiasm score, and then we'll update it. They should all do that at the same time. But if you open it in your own wallet, obviously what it does is it goes to check. The smile is controlled by the changes in the Bitcoin enthusiasm score. So what that means is if you open it and the first smile will be huge because that it's measuring the Bitcoin enthusiasm score. The original one is 0, and then the smile will start to either become smaller if the enthusiasm score drops or become bigger. So that on your own machine will be dependent on when you open the butt flower.
Got it.
But it will still give you an idea if it's going up or if it's going down. It's not really measuring tiny incremental changes in the blockchain.
Right.
What the enthusiasm score is doing, it's saying, okay, if year 0 is the day that Bitcoin started to be mined,
Mm-hmm.
and we look out into the future and we can see this enthusiasm growing,
Right.
um, you know, we want the enthusiasm score to have enough growth in the future that there's a lot of things that can only be unlocked as we get closer to mining all of Bitcoin out. So there's built in something into that. So the score will go up slowly, and the fact that we get close to mining will push it up further and further. At the moment, I've seen it kind of hover between as low as 55 maybe a year ago, up towards 65, sometimes 70. I've seen 70 activated, but there'll be a lot of those traits that aren't actually activated in our lifetime. It's built there to kind of activate in the future. But who knows? I mean, I'm not in control of this. But it's
So
taking that.
how do we get into this? So you've seen a max, just looking historically, set around 70. So we've get and does that mean the whole collection gets the bees in the
Yes.
background, the flying Bitcoin?
Yes.
And
Yeah, the whole
obviously each one has their own different traits. Just so anyone wants to see, there's a great link for all the inscription children. And the total amount was it 4,096? Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah, 4,096.
Oh my God, how many inscriptions are we at? I forgot, we're over 100 million, aren't we? God,
Oh, yeah, we're up there. We're up
isn't that
there.
crazy? That's so awesome.
Yeah, so there really are, we talk about living art, but to me, like these are rarely living art. They can't exist anywhere except on. They'll always cry when you first open it because what it's doing then is it's going to it's calculating the Bitcoin enthusiasm score in the background.
Mm,
And at one stage, I think I actually designed them not to cry, but
there it
then
is.
I was like, oh, we'll never probably see that crying in our lifetime. And there is just this little moment we all have when they go from crying to this big grin that I really
Yeah.
love. So I just kept it in there. Um, so you can see there they're all kind of half smiling because they've kind of been calculating the enthusiasm score in the background. The stalk, you'll see they're light green at the moment. That also changes. That's relating to mining difficulty.
Okay.
So yeah, there's 3 things that change. There's the animations, which switch on at different enthusiasm scores.
Right.
There's the smile that changes constantly, and there's the stalk.
So the
So yeah,
stock,
we've
as
seen.
the enthusiasm score goes up, the stock gets more green.
So if mining difficulty is lower than average and it's considered easy, they'll be green. If it's considered kind of average, it'll be dark green. If it's considered very difficult, it will be red. I've never seen them turn red. I've only seen light green and dark green.
I love it. Ah, it's so cool. Yeah, the Cyber Sea is always the first one I think of. He's
Yes.
so many great collections, but he loves plugging it with Deus Ex and what's the latest
Yeah,
one?
his work is just beautiful. I love his original collection. I'm such a massive fan of that one. It's just beautiful to watch. So this is, a slight iteration on this. It's not just taking these endpoints and reacting to them. It's taking the endpoints, giving them a new meaning, and then sending them back to us. And really trying to capture that enthusiasm and that we all have about Bitcoin, which I think is a very real thing.
Yeah, 100%. I love like I'm totally noodling around, but I'm noticing cigar and smoke. You got to get to 75, which it sounds like we haven't gotten there yet. Um,
I, every now and then you see a tiny spike and it'll come on for a few seconds. It's built to try and stabilize those spikes, but I have seen it switch on. So you might be lucky. And that's my favorite trait. I love it. There's little flower smoke rings coming out.
oh yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's like a pentagonal or hexagonal flower, if you will. Like that's super super cool. Um,
Yeah, so and all the traits are kind of meant to be a little bit irreverent. The name is as well. And
Great.
I think that's important when we create art that is inherently crypto, that we bring that culture into it. Sometimes I think we can do that too much. And like, I do want the atomic Bitcoin butt flowers to be, you know, something that, art galleries put up, but, in a way that at least there's some part of our culture in there.
Yeah. I just love thinking about the galleries like cuz like you said at some point people are going to catch on and the argument that I'm getting a little tired of be like, people need to collect real life art. That's what the big billionaire collectors. It's like, yeah, but that's this generation. They're going to pass their money to their kids and their kids' kids. At some point, people are like the blockchain, just like for my kids, like just social media, it's ubiquitous, right? It's just everywhere. They don't
Yeah.
know life without it. Or, I'm a Gen Xer. I knew life pre-internet. We had basic computers when I was a kid, which was great. So we're not afraid. We're well versed in them, but we also played a lot of kick the can, and we just went home when it was in the summer when it was super dark out, and you were tired, you wanted to go to bed. So it was just a different era. But to me, these future generations, at some point, I have to think, I mean, real life art will always have its place, but I
Always.
have to think that this will be at least on equal footing there, because there's no restoration. There's no, is this fake or real? There's so many positives that in real life art can't touch. But it's just, to me, it's just a matter of time. Really,
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
only thing that I think is difficult, we all know, we think we know that Bitcoin is going to just keep ripping for the next 10, 15 years or whatever, until global adoption is just, until it's more saturated and we're really in the laggard stage where the final holdouts are like, well, I guess I got to play this game, because then the price of Bitcoin can stabilize again. Then the price of art can increase versus the price of Bitcoin. Right now, this is the first time we've ever had an asset that literally increased in value over time. So your energy spent working or doing art or whatever can be put into something that actually grows more than the second you bought it, which is crazy. We've never had
Yeah.
that. We've always had the US dollar and dollars that are always inflationary. So rich people always stored some value in art. And the smart ones and the ones with discerning tastes, like, obviously greatly benefited there. But this is a whole different can of worms, I feel like, with Bitcoin, because as Bitcoin, you have to, right now with art and Bitcoin is probably going to have a higher demand because there's just more people who haven't been onboarded yet. And then I feel like ordinals can outpace Bitcoin once it's stabilized again. So probably getting a little too in the weeds there, but it's an interesting
No, well,
thought
I look, I
experiment.
think, yeah, I look, I think about that a lot. And I think also the pressure for too few people who are creating stuff on Bitcoin is to understand that Bitcoin has so much value in and of itself. To create on it, you've got to bring value to that asset, or else what you're doing is, people can spend their Bitcoin on what you've created and lose money. Now, that is not something you want to happen as a
Right.
creator. It's not your responsibility as such, but that there is that risk. So the bar for creating art on Bitcoin is so high, and it should be high, and it should remain high. And I think it's not really a degen kind of, when I say degen, I don't mean it in a bad way, but you do see people putting up like, some sort of 2-minute art collection they've created. And I think we've seen those birds like on 5 different things already. It's just like,
Yeah.
guys, why are you doing this? And why are people buying it? I find that quite distressing because I'm like, you're burning something of value. So you have to create art. In my mind, my responsibility as an artist is I have to create the best art I
Right.
can. I have to be innovating in a way that I think might not be, it will be recognized today. I do feel like a lot of people have got this and understand it's important, but do understand that this is something that can in the future possibly boost that investment in Bitcoin. Like that is a possibility. Just like punks on ETH, if you buy a punk, it doesn't really matter what ETH does. It kind of just rides up. And if ETH goes up, you get a cherry on top.
Yeah, I think that's
So
true medium, short term for sure. I think long term, it really just depends because there's a lot of variables. If ETH goes up and keeps going up, people who have been in ETH a while feel more bold and they're like, well, what I don't spend my Bitcoin on, I'm rich there. So but newer people obviously are completely priced out because they're like, I'm not going to spend, now that a crypto punk's $1 million, I'm not going to spend it. So I think it goes both ways, but overall, I think you're absolutely right. The true grail collections will follow with it, but it just depends really how much Bitcoin and maybe ETH to a certain degree melt faces with going up by another 10 or 100x, because ETH
yeah,
finally ETH after just being stuck at 2 to 3 or whatever finally breaks out and goes back to 4 again, right? I mean, it's been forever, but Bitcoin's just been eating the share of market crypto lunch for so long in this last bull
yeah,
cycle.
sure.
ETH, we know ETH's not going away. It's got a great use case, but it's been a tough ride for them. And now you see bankless everywhere again. They're just like, they're doing their victory laps times 100. But it's an interesting thought experiment at least. But I love these projects. I love what you're doing here. Where is this all being where's it being auctioned and when? Like, can we get it now or is
Yeah,
it coming
sure.
soon?
Yeah, so we are minting on in Gamma. I love what Gamma has done for artists, and I think they've been great leaders in supporting artists, and that's important to me. So we're minting on Gamma. We mint my Monday, most people's Tuesday, which is the 18th of August.
Okay.
So that will be my collectors on that day, and then we are minting for everyone else on the 19th. Most whitelists are closed at the moment, but there is one more whitelist you can access, which is on the abbf.xyz website. You can fill in a first come first serve form there if you go up the top to whitelist. Yeah, if you fill that in, you'll get on the whitelist, and we'll leave that open as long as we can. And there's some mint details there for everyone as well. So yeah, it's always nerve-wracking
Yeah.
before you do a big thing like this, but whatever happens, we will figure a way through it. you just never know how it goes. And I certainly, I'm not someone who feels like under pressure to sell out in 24 hours or anything like that. Sometimes these things are a slow build, particularly when you've got a collection that requires people to, not just look at something and assume it's a JPEG. Understand there's a bit more there, but yeah, we'll see. You've got to just put yourself out there.
That's really cool. So when you mint, obviously it's a blind mint, because I actually see the different ones down here. So you'll get one of these, or are these ones that have already been minted for like the team or something?
No, that you'll get one of those.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, they're so awesome, and I
Yeah.
love how I could tell you put a lot of thought into these. They're so varied, and like some of them remind me of like my favorite Muppets, and like some flowers, and I love the backgrounds that you use, the different like
Yeah.
emoji and ASCII symbols for. It just I'm a huge fan of ASCII art. I don't know why. There's just something so basic and kind of primal about it in the coding ecosystem that it's really fun to
Yeah.
watch.
There's quite a variation in background. For some reason, the backgrounds were assigned in blocks like that. I have no reason why. I looked at my code and couldn't understand. But there are ones that use recursion and kind of link to very early ones, and I've created new patterns with those. But I do love the variation that you get from very simple rules, and it's one of the ideas I love behind the flower. There's some asymmetric ones. There's some rare sort of alien butt flowers. There's a cat butt flower. There's a couple of glitch traits. There's a lot there to explore. Um, I can't wait for everyone to get theirs and yeah,
Can I
start
sort
people
by
sharing
trait
it.
here yet? Let's see. Phil.
No, you can't.
That's what I
You
thought.
can't. I
Okay.
haven't put in the metadata. Yeah, I've got to create the metadata. That's my big job this weekend.
What's your
So
just for a little alpha for the listeners? What's your favorite, or what are a couple traits you're really excited to share?
Well, if you go up to the top, I can show you one of the traits I love because I think there was one in one of the early ones. Sorry, they've just got a render, but I love it when the background and the petals are actually the same color, and it kind of creates this full sort of jelly look. I love that. I do love the alien and the cats. I don't think they're any kind of early on. There's the rainbow mouth, which is there as well. I do. I love that one.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
which let me know which ones. Oh, here's
yeah.
the
Okay.
is it this one? This guy right here?
If you go up a little, sorry, directing. Uh, is that at the top?
I'm at the
Is that
very
number one?
top, yeah.
Oh, very top. Oh, it might be. I think it's just.
Random.
It might be. Is it? I can't see. Is it displaying them in order there?
Let me see. What I don't know how it's ordering. 102, 352,
No, it's not. It's not doing
831,
them in order.
830. Oh, it looks like it's by lowest price, which obviously doesn't mean anything. I can go by lowest number though. Here's lowest.
Oh, there. So you see there's two here. They're actually not that very common. You see the little pink one and the little blue one on the right, where you have the petals kind of melt into the flowers. I don't know why. I just love those ones.
Yeah, I do too. There is something cool
I
about
call
that.
them Yeah, I call them jellies. There's a very cool color palette with black in it, and if the face is black, then the mouth is white. They look really cool.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
there's another little one there. They're actually not that common, the sort of jelly ones. But yeah, and then there's another one where the flowers are it's very rare, where the petals are all asymmetric.
Mm.
Um, some are big, some are small, and it just kind of looks super kooky. But yeah, there's lots to explore there. But basically, you're meant to look at everyone and just feel some joy. That was, the basics of what I was after as an artist.
Yeah, no, this
And,
is
and of
super
course,
cool.
yeah, and of course, because there's so much animation, I had to. There was always that balance between keeping them simple enough that the art didn't overwhelm the animation and everything that's kind of switched on.
Right. These are so cool. Well, King, it was great having you on the show, and I appreciate you walking us through it. This looks like a great mint. So next Monday, Tuesday, the 18th, 19th, go to Gamma.
Yeah.
.io and you can mint these things. There's 4,096. Is there anything that we didn't cover, either about the ABBFs or just anything you wanted to share with the audience?
No, I mean, look, I can talk about art and bore anyone on it. But other than to say, it's a project that was 18 months of work in the making, and I think it's pretty unique, and ultimately I just want people to enjoy it. So I think if people look at them over time, they'll see the animation traits kind of switch on. I think the lasers just switched on now, laser beam. So because I see the BES is at 62.0,
Oh,
but
sweet. We got to laser beams. Hold on.
yeah, they should be.
Let's see. Let's just pick you. Let's finish with our. So we're always sad at first, and we've never actually been sad. Tying into the endpoints of the blockchain there. Oh, we've hit lasers. So what was that number? That's like 70.
That's between 60 and 65. Yeah.
60, 65. Okay, so we're moving up. So that you said we've hit 70 before. There we go. So 60
Yeah,
to
we
65.
have.
We have reached lasers because we are at 62.0. And that changes every block, or does it change a little less frequently than that?
So what it's doing, it's checking every 30 seconds. But what it actually does is the algorithm actually evens that out. It kind of takes the average of 12 and then gives you a score. The reason is else, when I was playing around with them, you just kind of, you saw traits flash on and flash off too quickly.
Right.
So, which is not that great to kind of look at. So it's got to be there for a kind of meaningful time. But it is tracking it. Yeah.
Very cool. So it checks every 30 seconds. So if
checking every
30 minutes.
30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. So we could get lasers literally for 30 seconds, and then it could go back in the 50s and they'd be gone.
Well, it kind of evens it out. So they should stay on for, they stay on. Sometimes they've been on for like a day and a half. It's trying to create these chunks of meaningful measurement.
Right.
As it goes up. But yeah, it's been interesting. I'd say last week was the lowest I'd seen it kind of hang for a while. And then this week we've seen the laser beams switch on a couple of times. And then there've been other times, as I've been creating it, I've seen the laser beams stick on for a week. Like, it becomes quite interesting to track. And I'm actually going to start to track it against price just to see what actually happens.
Right. Well, that's super cool. And how you get to price is obviously indirect, but it's cool that you really thought about, okay, given the endpoints we have, how do we gauge kind of this emotional or this happy score, the Bitcoin enthusiasm score, BES. I love that. But how do we get to that? I think this is super smart. I love the art. Like you said, it brings a smile to your face. And it's just neat. So everybody check out Gamma, follow at kingpunkape to learn more, but it's cool to see you keep building on Bitcoin and keep evolving with what you're building. And I'm excited for this mint. Really am. So thanks for coming on, King Punk Ape. It's been fun. This is Blue Toshi and Blu Node Lounge. And what a great conversation. So thanks again.
Thanks, Blue.
Yep. Take care.